Kia ora, my friends, and welcome back to Drop Balls and Big Calls. Today, I sit down with former Australian volleyballer Debs Moore, and I'll be honest, this one blew me away. See, Debs has lived through moments that would stop most of us in our tracks, from the highs of elite sport to surviving a tsunami over in Thailand. But what really struck me wasn't just her resilience, it was her ability to keep moving forward without looking back. She's got this incredible appetite for risk, a mindset of saying yes, even when the fear is screaming no. In this conversation, we unpack how that courage has shaped her life, her career, and her perspective on what really matters. Enjoy. So, Debs, welcome to Drop Balls and Big Calls. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, you've been described as adventurous, humbly driven, and the most positive person in the room by more than one person, might I add. But I also heard a story that you're apparently someone that still hasn't fired your husband after you got him a job on that boat all those years ago.
That's true. He's still around.
He's clearly made an impression then. That's good. You didn't have to fire him after all that.
No. Thank God. It was nice to know that I had that power if I needed to use it. But yeah, he was good enough to keep around.
Yeah, nice one. Well, we'll come back to all those stories because it's quite an amazing adventure that you've been on throughout your life. But you've had a life of being an athlete, a volleyballer. You've been on yachts. You've survived a tsunami, and you're now living here on the beautiful Mornington Peninsula and working in aged care. What an amazing life. But when people first meet you, do they usually see the athlete, the adventurer, or the optimist first? What do you reckon they see?
I'd say probably the optimist. Yeah, that's a tough one. Because I guess even though I'm almost 53, I still feel like, I am an athlete. I don't know. I think when people see me, they probably would assume because of my height that, maybe I played some kind of sport. But yeah, I'd probably go with the optimism, I reckon.
Yeah, amazing. So, take us back, Deb. So you discovered, all throughout your childhood, from what I've heard, you had a passion for sport, but there was one that you really gravitated towards, and that was volleyball. Take us back on your early years and finding your feet in a sporting sense.
Always loved all sports, I guess. And yeah, I would say decent at most things that I attempted. Volleyball was a sport that at my high school wasn't a big sport. In fact, there was only a boys team, and I had an English teacher that asked me to come to training with the boys, which I did. And then I was fortunate. He kind of, I guess, saw a little bit of talent in me, and he said, "Oh, I've got a friend that plays in a ladies team. Would you be interested in going along for a training session?" And yeah, I kind of went to one session, and there was one person there that was, very talented and quite high up in the ranks of volleyball, and she, I guess, also saw some potential in me, and yeah, she kind of took me under her wing and I guess showed me the way to where I needed to go if I wanted to be the best that I could be at it.
Did you have the passion for that sport straight away, or were your interests sort of across the board and you were finding your feet there?
I think as soon as I started picking up a little bit of a skill set, I became passionate for that sport pretty quickly, I think.
And so what age were you when your English teacher took you to the boys team and had that first crack?
I think I was about 15, maybe 16. I knew that playing on a boys team was probably, not going to be something that I would continue to do. But yeah, I guess just seeing a broader spectrum of the sport, amongst girls and women, of my, similar height. I was probably one of the younger ones in the group of people that I played with, but just had some really good mentors, in that, especially in that early stages.
Amazing. Talk us through your first steps at the club. What did that look like? I guess getting into the club environment and that development phase.
I think that the club environment, from what I remember, we there were like 2 training sessions a week and a game every Saturday, which could have been, yeah, kind of all around, I guess, outskirts of Melbourne suburbs. So yeah, even I haven't thought about it for ages, but there were girls on the team that were driving. I was obviously too young to drive. And I had people come and pick me up and take me to training and bring me back home, and then come and pick me up to take me to games and take me back home. Um, yeah, it was good, and that kind of, I guess, from the club environment then led to heading into representing Victoria as a junior, and then later representing Australia as a junior as well.
Oh, amazing! So you climbed the ranks quite quickly by the sounds of that.
Yeah, I felt like I did kind of, but I know, yeah, I was working pretty hard to do that. Once I knew that there was a possibility that I could do those things, I know, yeah, all of my kind of spare time outside of school was spent training and, yeah, trying to get myself fitter and stronger and, you know, improve my skill set so that I could be the best that I could be.
Hmm. What did that look like? So you obviously spent your whole day at school, and then from the time you leave school, what did working hard look like in that context?
Definitely hitting the gym. I used to go to the gym, I don't know, probably like 4 or 5 times a week over the weekend, or, on the days that I didn't have scheduled volleyball training. Yeah, going for runs. I think from a pretty early age too, just I was pretty interested in nutrition. So like eating and fueling myself to be able to do, physically the stuff that I was doing. But yeah, lots of work outside of just rocking up to training 2 nights a week and playing in a game on Saturday.
Yeah, amazing. How did you learn all the elements of nutrition and what needed to be done to get to that level, to that elite level?
I think probably like through school, yeah, I always just had an interest in like food and nutrition, and I guess I learnt pretty young that, just things like carbohydrates that a lot of people are, afraid of and shy away from. They're so necessary for you to sustain, physically, because sometimes like a volleyball game could last for up to 3 hours. And even though it's not like aerobic game for 3 hours, you've got to have the ability to have, really quick reactions and powerful moves and sustain that over a long period of time. So, yeah, I think probably just my own research and reading, really.
Yeah, amazing. So yeah, absolute determination.
Yeah.
It's pretty. No matter what sport you're in, it's a pretty significant thing to represent your country, and something that not many people get to do. And you started doing this from a junior level. Talk us through your first days going into camp with the Australian team, and talk us through what you remember of those times in terms of how you were feeling, the environment, and the steps leading up to that.
Yeah, I think through funding and through like at the kind of junior level, they would like, I think we would go to like the AIS would call in, say, 50 girls, and, know that they were going to put a team together for like an Asian qualifying championship. And then over the course of a couple of weeks, they would kind of select, I think they would usually take about 15 girls away, only 6 girls on the court at any one time. So yeah, it was pretty kind of, yeah, cutthroat to be in that top six. But yeah, I guess from my perspective, it was like, yeah, if I was gonna make it to be selected in that initial 50, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't have been happier with anything other than, being one of the best six so that I could be on the court. Um, and yeah, we would get together and I think train for a couple of weeks before we would go overseas and play. And girls from all around Australia would come together and, we would do our best to, I mean, I guess like any team sport, you can have, 6, 12, however many awesome individual athletes, but if you put those 6 people on a team together, it doesn't necessarily mean that, the team's going to be good. The dynamic has to work and, everyone has to know how everyone else plays. So I think that was probably one of the challenging things, not having a huge amount of time to prepare as a team.
Hmm. Now, I believe funding played a critical part in you having to eventually relocate to WA at quite a young age.
Yeah, I think initially the Australian Volleyball Federation was going to put in X amount of money to fund the program, and then it was, I guess, put up for tender for which state government was willing to put in the most money to have the all of the women that were on the Australian senior team relocate to the same location so that that could become a full-time training thing for all of us. And yeah, WA was the state that was willing to put up the most money. So yeah, we all kind of packed up our lives from wherever we lived in Australia and headed over to WA, which wasn't such a bad place to have
How
to
old were
go
you at
to.
this point?
I think I must have just finished year 12, so that was probably like maybe 18. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
think probably 18.
Massive decision to head over there on your own at that age, though.
Yeah, pretty big, but I guess, because volleyball had become such a huge part of my life, a lot of the girls that were also moving, I guess, were kind of, yeah, like family in a sense. So I knew I wasn't kind of going solo. I knew that there was going to be, a lot of people there that I was comfortable with and I enjoyed being around and playing volleyball with, obviously.
So good, and yeah, like you said, not a bad place to move to. What do you remember of those first few weeks?
Um, I guess living out of home for the first time, and I was moved into just like a little unit with one of the other girls on the team. So I think there was kind of excitement about uh, freedom and, not having parents to say, you know, what time are you coming home? Why did you get home so late? I mean, yeah, we we obviously had to kind of, I guess, learn to, cook for ourselves and take care of ourselves. Yeah, the memories are a little bit faded, I guess, from that time.
Incredible though. That yeah, really yeah, pretty amazing to take early steps out of home at that age and do something incredible like that. Now, were you training sort of like full time at this point, or were you having to work alongside the professional environment?
Yeah, it was kind of like the wage that we drew from playing volleyball was, I guess, if you wanted to live on 2 minute noodles, you could probably live off the you know the volleyball funding. So I think at that point, yeah, I knew I needed to get some extra work as well and a job that would fit around training times because we were training every day. So I did like a cert 3 and 4 in fitness, and the gym that we trained at, well, there was a place called the Superdome, I think it was called. So it was like the Western Australian Institute of Sport. So they had, pretty much state of the art facilities, and they had a gym there where we trained, and then they had like a gym, resistance training area, and they actually took me on. So I was kind of able to work, like train and then go to work at the same facility. So it was pretty handy.
What was the pressure like being in a high performance environment like that?
I think the pressure was definitely a little bit heavier. Um, the girls on the team, there were, I guess, a real mix of ages, but I guess the more senior girls on the team were probably feeling a little bit threatened by the younger ones, and the younger ones were probably, I don't know, in a sense, tiptoeing a little bit because those older senior women had been in their positions for a lot of years. Yeah, but it was, yeah, there was certainly more pressure in a full time situation rather than getting together and going on a 2 week training camp before we would go on a tour somewhere.
Mm. What impact did that have on the culture? Like, were there steps taken in the background to try and alleviate some of those frustrations or some of those pressures, or was it just literally walking on eggshells?
We actually had a sports psychologist that we all had to, like, it was mandatory for us to work with. So I guess any individual concerns that we had, we would feel comfortable to discuss with them. There were a few of the psychologists, and then yeah, they were pretty good with giving us kind of strategies that we needed to use, and just making, I guess, me feel comfortable to just go for it.
Yeah, amazing. Now, around this time, you also started getting some interest from the US in terms of scholarship offerings over there. Talk us through when you were first approached, and I guess the mindset you were in at that time.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd been approached prior to going to Perth, maybe like a year or two before going to Perth, and I'd been offered a scholarship. I think they had some scouts out here that saw me playing somewhere, and they the head coach from the University of Houston contacted me and offered me a scholarship to go and play, and in return of for playing volleyball at the university, my education would be paid for as well. Um, and I think for the first couple of years when this was offered to me, yeah, I guess my heart was more with playing for my country, representing Australia. I think that was kind of where I wanted to be. Again, the timeline's probably a little bit dusty, but um, I got a pretty serious shoulder injury when I was in Perth, and I was told that I could have surgery, but I would probably never play volleyball again, or they couldn't guarantee that my shoulder would be in good enough shape for that to happen again. So I had another offer from the University of Houston, and I contacted the coach and um, just said to him, like, spend your time recruiting somebody else. I've got a massive injury, and it's not going to happen for me. And yeah, fortunately, he was interested enough and asked me to send over any medical MRIs and things like that that I had. And um, I kind of had a bit of a decision to make, because the Australian Volleyball Team basically said they would pay for half of my surgery here, and I would have to foot the bill for the other half, which I didn't have the money for. Or the guy from the States said, come over here. We've got great surgeons. The surgeons have a look at your MRI. He feels really confident that he can fix your shoulder. So yeah, that was a pretty big moment. If I wanted to continue my career in any way, shape, or form, I kind of felt like I had to go.
That's a lot of well, for one, it's a big call to move overseas, but it's a lot of pressure on you when you want to play for your country. On the one hand, you're being told, "Oh, we may not be able to fix it to the extent you can play again," and yet you've got this lucrative deal over in the States saying, "Yeah, we can fix it. We'll pay for all your schooling, anything you need."
Yeah,
Pretty big fork in the road for you.
yeah, it was massive, and I think too, like, I guess, like, leaving Melbourne to go to Perth again. Like, I was still in Australia, surrounded by people that I had known for quite some time. Whereas, yeah, making that decision to go to the States, I think I was 20 when I left to go. Making that decision was pretty huge because it was just like getting on a flight and, flying to Houston, Texas, getting picked up from the airport by a coach that I didn't know. I'd had a couple of chats on the phone and a few letters, to then, yeah, be thrown into an environment. Like, I think the enrollment at the university was like 36,000 people. So it
Holy
was a
shit. Yeah.
it was a pretty big uni, and yeah, very just culturally very different from anywhere that I'd had ever been.
Yeah, 100%. Was there anyone that you were sort of able to confide in to make that decision?
Um, Look, I had, I guess, a couple of my really good friends that I'm still friends with. One in particular today. She was living in Perth as well, and yeah, I I feel like I chatted through it quite a bit, like with her. My parents, I yeah, I think they were. My dad was always supportive. I think my mum just was probably afraid of me living that far away from home, but was still obviously supporting the idea of me going to.
So yeah, I guess the flip side to this is you get over there and you know you've got to face the surgery. Was it like a rotator cuff issue or something a bit more significant?
Initially, it was like I think I had a bit of an impingement problem, so they did like a smaller, just like an arthroscope in when I was in Perth to see, what this impingement thing was, and it was when they went in then that they kind of decided that, yeah, the shoulder needed to be reconstructed. Like, all of my ligaments and tendons were in pretty bad shape.
Hmm.
Um,
How soon after getting off the plane were you getting that surgery over there?
so I think I arrived, the school year starts in August. So I think I arrived in like August of 94. And then I feel like I might have had the surgery like in November. So I spent a couple of months doing what rehab I could to get a little bit stronger, prior to going under the knife. And then, yeah, I think I had the surgery like November, December. And then, yeah, it was a pretty massive rehab, um, to get back to being strong. And that kind of didn't really come about. I mean, we had physio on tap at the university. So it was like, yeah, the treatment that I had for my recovery was above and beyond anything that I would have had I stayed here. Um, but yeah, the plan was to be ready to go for the following season. So in August of the following year,
So you had a
which,
fair bit of time there.
yeah, had a fair bit of time to go through, yeah, all of the strengthening. And initially it was like they tightened everything up so much that I had, not much movement at all. In fact, I think I had my arm like strapped to my body for like the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then it was just gently working through increasing your range of movement until I had the movement that I needed, and then developing strength after that.
How confident were you that you were going to be able to get back?
I don't feel like I ever really doubted that I would get back, and it's probably making such a big decision to go. I think, yeah, if I had have gone with doubt, that could have potentially have affected the outcome. But I think, when you say about being optimistic, it's like, yeah, I don't ever recall feeling like, oh, am I ever going to play again? I just always knew that I would. It was just a matter of when.
Amazing. That first season, August comes around. You've done your rehab, and I imagine a lot of work in the gym and with the new team at that time.
I remember, yeah, like we used to do pretty big, like, they do like video footage of whatever team we were playing. Um, and the first game that I played in after, surgery, rehab, I remember our like pre-game, I guess, team meeting, and we kind of talked about the tactical side of things of, who we were playing, which players we need to be, keeping an eye out for. And then the coach, I remember him saying like, and there's one person in this room who I'm sure is like super excited about getting back on the court today. And he said, obviously me. And yeah, it was like pretty emotional. I do remember there was a few tears shed. But I just remember the excitement of, yeah, being able to be exactly where I hoped I could be again.
Incredible, incredible. And you must have had a good run over there. I think you were there for 5 years in the end. How do you reflect back on that time now? With how far you've come in your life, how do you reflect on that time? What do you think young Debs would say looking back on that time?
I think, I mean, 5 years, yeah, a lot. There are a lot of lessons learnt in that 5 years. I think discipline is definitely one because yeah, to kind of balance a pretty heavy study regime as well as, 3 to 4 hours training every day and then traveling and playing. I think, yeah, the young Debs would probably just say, you know, any opportunities that come your way, don't don't have doubt. Give it a go. Give it a shot. You know, if you fail, there's probably another way to go about things.
That discipline and that those words of advice, how has that set you up throughout your life following that? How has it showed up in different pieces?
I think I'm pretty disciplined in a lot of ways. I'm disciplined with like just kind of structuring my day from getting up to what I fuel myself with for breakfast, even though I'm not eating to you know fuel myself to be an athlete. I think I still think that you know food is such an important thing to keep us feeling good and functioning well. Yeah, discipline with food that I eat, discipline with, continuing to take the time to exercise and keep my body as strong as I can for, the age that I am, I guess. Um,
21.
that's it. I wish.
Amazing. So you're coming through. You're coming up to 5 years in the US, and now you're starting to get calls from back here in Australia. I believe it was in the year leading up to the Sydney Olympics back in 2000 or 1999, I should say. Um, Talk us through that period and I guess what that meant to you to start hearing that call from back home.
um, I guess I felt like I was pretty established with living in the States. And at that point in time, yeah, I was probably thinking that that's where I was going to spend the rest of my life. Mm, I had a decent job. I had, good friends around me. I had a boyfriend at the time. And then, yeah, getting the call to come back home for the Olympics. Yeah, it was, I'd say almost a little bit bittersweet because I felt like, yeah, when I left to go to America, I felt like I wasn't 100% supported by like the Australian Volleyball Federation at the time. Um, and then, I guess the word Olympics just kind of overrode any negative feelings because, yeah, as an athlete, I guess that's most athletes dream if they're involved in whatever sport it is. If you can reach that Olympic level, then you know you've there's not really there's no higher that you can go.
Hmm. Had you, when you left here to go to the States, had you closed the book on Australia at that point?
Um, Not. I don't think I burnt any bridges as such. I think, I obviously said to them, I met with the board in Perth and just kind of said, this is the situation I'm in. This is my shoulder. This is what needs doing. You guys are going to pay for half of it here. I need to come up with the money. I've got the opportunity to go to the States and they're going to pay for everything and they're going to give me an education. Um, and I do remember them saying, if you go to the States, there's no way that you'll get as good a like match practice as you would if you stayed here. So they just kind of dismissed the whole like shoulder thing and the education thing. But yeah, I tried not to burn bridges when I left. Um, so I guess, yeah, I mustn't have if they did kind of reach out to contact me to ask me to come back again.
How difficult was it to tell your colleagues in the US that you were going to return home?
Yeah, I think it was pretty hard because that kind of phone call to come home certainly came out of the blue. Yeah, at that stage I had kind of finished, graduated from college and I was working, so I'd probably hadn't been playing volleyball for 6 months or so, like that kind of volleyball thing. I was working for a volleyball club, but I wasn't playing as such. So yeah, I think out of the blue, and I remember not having a lot of time to make that decision and to get home. Um, so I think my close friends from over there were supportive, but obviously, you know, a little bit sad, just leaving friends that you'd had for the last 5 years that had pretty much become your family.
So you come back home and you suffered a pretty major setback again, though. I think months out from the Olympics, you had to make the brutal call to step away from the
Yeah,
sport.
yeah, that's right. I think I was at that point in time. I guess I was probably like 20. I can't even remember how old I was. Maybe like 27 or so. I knew that it was kind of a little bit of a risk coming back, um, knowing that, as well as having shoulder surgery, I had a couple of knee surgeries while I was in the States as well. So I knew that, yeah, my body, whilst I was still fit, I knew there's obviously going to come a time where your body's just not capable of doing the things that it could once do. And I think like early in the piece, coming back, we used to play against like men's teams so we were based at the AIS in Canberra, and I was playing in a game and like dived on the floor to pick up a ball and broke my wrist. So there was another like injury to add to all the other ones that were kind of laying somewhat dormant. Um, the the coach of the team kind of, uh, I don't feel like he was overly supportive. Like initially, he brought me back, and kind of gave me promises of you know health insurance and things like that. And there were a lot of kind of false promises that when I actually got back, I didn't. Yeah, those things didn't come to fruition. So I did start to get a little bit concerned about injuries, and I think I kind of went through uh, a bit of time where like I had to then rehab through a broken wrist to then come back from that, which I did. And then, yeah, my shoulder just started packing it in, and I partially dislocated my shoulder again. And then, yeah, it kind of got to a point where it was like, you know, if I wanted to play volleyball again, I would need to have to have another surgery. The rehab time was, longer than from the time leading up to the Olympics, so I wouldn't have been ready. And I think, yeah, that was kind of a bit of a tipping point where I just had to make that call to say that's I got to go, I got to get out of here.
Because Canberra's too cold, isn't it? That's why all the injuries were happening. It's just too cold.
Canberra's a shithole. No offense to anyone from Canberra.
No good. Uh, it's a tough one because it's all you've known, throughout a lot of, even from your adolescence onwards. It's all you'd known for such a long time. How did those initial steps feel coming out of that environment, and I guess not really knowing where you were going to land at that point?
Yeah, I think at at the time I kind of, yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I remember I called, my sister was living up in Airlie Beach, and I called her, and I remember being like distraught, like I was crying, and I was like, I've made this decision, and I'm leaving, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And she just said to me, just come up here. There's heaps of work. Just get on a plane, get here, you'll be fine. So yeah, I kind of, again, just packed my bags and went up there, and um, yeah, into a completely different environment. As you said, volleyball was kind of all I ever really knew. And then, yeah, I went into an environment where I started, yeah, my job was working on a day boat that went out, I think, 3 days a week to Whitehaven Beach, and then 2 days a week to Blue Pearl Bay, like diving and snorkeling. So it wasn't really, wasn't an awful place to have to live.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a wonderful part of the world, and I'd imagine it gave you a bit of space to sort of unwind and really think about, perhaps what you want the next part of your life to look like.
Yeah, I think so. I think probably the first portion, I can't really, again, the timeline's a long time ago, but the first portion of my time up in Airlie, um, is definitely a bit blurry, because I went probably from being, the most disciplined, tuned, um, athlete to not having to be accountable to for anything, you know, working in a beautiful place. I think they say Airlie Beach, it's either a sailing town with a drinking problem or a drinking town with a sailing problem. So
That's pretty accurate.
it is. And yeah, I certainly, yeah, had fun. I had a lot of fun times in Airlie, many that I probably can't remember too clearly.
Probably hard not to have a good time with all the backpackers and tourists in town wanting to have a good time and being on boats. That's the lifestyle, isn't it?
Yeah, I can remember one of the boats that I worked on. It was like mandatory for like the crew to go to the pub and like meet with the punters after their day cruise. So it was like, yeah, looking back now, it's kind of like, yeah, the occupational health and safety was pretty loose.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Uh, In terms of like you'd moved around a little bit at this point, right? You'd gone from Melbourne to Perth to the States and travelled and back again and now to Ely. Uh, you're like, as someone that's from overseas as well and has moved around a bit himself. Like, I find it really hard at times to find a sense of home. Like, I don't really know what home is, if you know what I mean. Um, and I was told by someone, a therapist actually, that home is within. Ultimately, if you can find that within yourself, then you know where home is. How do you reflect back on those times, having moved around so much at this point at such a young age?
Yeah, I think wherever I was, I would pretty quickly make that home. But I also found whilst I could kind of uproot and go to a new place and I guess find myself pretty comfortable pretty quickly, I I also I don't necessarily think it's a good trait, but when I leave a place, I just kind of close that door and I'm not reaching back for things from that life that I had. I just tend to close that door and focus on where I am at the time.
Yeah, constantly moving forward. And ultimately you end up in Spain.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice one. Oh, phew, got that right.
Nice feeling.
How did that come about?
Just uh, a friend in Airlie. She had said that she had a mate over there who was a captain on a sailing boat, and he needed a crew member to come over, and I think the deal was to fly into the south of Spain and then jump on the boat with two other crews. So there would be four of us, and we would sail from the south of Spain to Norway. And the owners of the boat, they were Norwegian. So then we spent like the summer kind of cruising around the Norwegian and Denmark. I think we were like all the fjords and things up there. And then yeah, they would get off and we sailed the boat back down to Spain. And I think that was kind of like I feel like I did like 6 months on and 6 months back in Italy. So yeah, the guy who was the captain, um, I had to get a CV together to. I thought, yeah, you know what, I might give this one a go. And looking back now, it's kind of surprised because even though working in the marine industry gave me so much, I never felt like it was really something I was that passionate about. Um, but yeah, I just kind of made up a CV with, the one job that I had been doing up in Airlie, on the day boat up there, and sent it off to Dave, was the captain, and yeah, he just said, "How soon can you get here?" So I think he took a risk in, taking me, because the boat that I worked on in Airlie was a catamaran, and this boat was like a single hull. So yeah, as far as sailing skills go, you don't really need to be overly skilled on a catamaran. Whereas, a single hull vessel, yeah, you need to know a bit. But he was happy to kind of teach me on the fly, I guess.
Amazing. And what was your role?
So on that boat, they kind of called it like, I guess you'd be like first mate. So Dave was obviously the captain, and so when he was steering the boat, I was, yeah, looking after the sails and the deck and stuff. When the guests were on board, I would cook for them, and I would, make sure that their cabins were nicely presented for them. Um, and then, yeah, when we would come back to Spain, there was a lot of like varnish work on the boat, and yeah, so then I had to learn how to varnish and strip and, kind of redo the whole boat in the down periods, and then I would come back to Airlie for a spell and then head back over there. I think I did 2 or 3 years where I did six months on and then 6 months back here.
Now I've watched like 2 episodes, so don't judge me. But is it like Below Deck where you've got these wealthy guests coming on board, you then get your tips and you go out and blow it all partying each night? Is it
Um,
like that?
Look, there are big parts of like below decks, probably myself and my husband who was with me working on those boats. Um, yeah, it is. There's a lot of it that is very true to life. Um, you're living and working on this big luxurious yacht, yet the crew cabins when you're 6 foot tall, you're lucky if your feet and your head aren't touching the wall when you're in bed. It's yeah. And I guess when it comes to the money side of things, um, yeah, a lot of people would just have charter guests on board. They get off, and then people would just go like straight to the bar and blow a lot of money. Whereas we'd usually go exploring and have a look around at the amazing places that we're at, and then maybe end up at the bar for a couple of drinks at the end of the day.
So good. What did life on the water give you that elite sport didn't?
Freedom, even though we were, I guess, on the clock, working when we were there, we were like, if we had guests on board, like one of the boats I worked on was owned by a Russian guy, and there was one season that he came on for like 135 days straight, and our working roster was like 8 hours on, 8 hours off, 4 hours on, 4 hours off, 8 hours on, 8 hours off. That went on for like 136 days.
Jesus.
So, like during that time, you're, I guess, you're earning money, but you're not spending money. But I guess even when you are working, you know, when the guests go to bed and you find yourself at a beautiful anchorage and you might be, you know, operating a crane and lifting a jet ski up onto the top deck, but you feel pretty privileged to be in the places that you're in, even though you're working really hard while you're there.
Yeah, we talk about the parties, but it is difficult work, isn't it?
Yeah,
You're at the beck and call of people a lot.
absolutely. And they I would say the most demanding people I've ever come across in my life is my time working on super yachts.
It's an amazing experience, though. Now, no, we're going back. So you're on yachts, but this time you're in Thailand, and I want to go to 2004, where it's Boxing Day, and you're anchored out at sea, from what I understand. Talk me through that day.
Boxing Day itself, earlier that morning, actually, I'd been on leave, so I'd been back in Australia, and I flew into Phuket, I think on Christmas Day, and then I so the boat was actually anchored at Tong Bay in Phuket, and um, I joined the boat very early that morning on the 26th. So I'd stayed in a hotel that night and got on board like really early that morning. Um, and we had guests on board. Um, I think, prior to the tsunami actually coming through, because obviously the 20, that's a pretty special, memorable date for me. Prior to, that happening, we were just at anchor, off Patong Beach, and one of the crew had gone for a stroll, I think just doing his rounds, and walked to the aft deck and had a look over the side. And I think we were anchored in about 12 or 13 meters of water. And he looked over and basically saw that we were almost on the bottom. So, yeah, that 12 or 13 meters of water underneath us had pretty much disappeared. And he obviously flagged that with the captain. And the captain at that point in time, had no idea what was going on. But luckily, he had the sense to just get the engineers to start the engines. And he just said, we've got to get out of here. We need to move into deeper water. So,
Can I just interject there? So, like I've experienced pretty significant earthquakes back home in Christchurch through 2010 and 2011, and
huge.
that they were just devastating quakes. But obviously that was on land. You could hear the rumble. You can feel it. Did you have any sense until you saw that the boat was slowly drifting towards the bottom of the sea floor? The water was going out, obviously. Did you know that anything had happened? Did you hear anything? Nothing felt unusual at all?
No, it was. I remember it was like a beautiful, like blue skies, sun was shining. Um, yeah, I think the first thing, yeah, the first, I guess when I was called to the foredeck to kind of assist with getting the anchors up, that was part of one of my roles at the time on the boat. Um, yeah, even then I didn't really know what was going on or why, and I don't even think the captain did. We had two other small boats tied up to the bigger boat, and he just said, like, two other crew members get in those boats. We need to untie you and just like head out to sea, and we'll be right behind you. And I think it was kind of at that point, once the anchor was up, we went down to the aft deck and we could see like Patong Beach, and that's when we just started to feel a little bit of, I guess, swell, but it still didn't feel that massive from where we were because we were far enough out that we weren't, the water hadn't broken, the waves weren't breaking.
Mm.
But yeah, we pretty much just like watched that entire area get smashed by, I don't know how many waves there were, but there were several. And it was surreal because who thinks that there's a tsunami? Who thinks that, that's going to be what you wake up and are going to be a part of on that day?
How was the tone or the feeling on the boat at that point? Was it just silent, like you just weren't aware what was happening? And bear in mind, like you're in a time as well where there was no tsunami warning systems in, anywhere really,
No.
let alone in that part of the world.
Yeah, it was, I think it was all, I know we were getting a little bit of communication through, and I think we used to get like CNN on the telly on the boat. And I think, as soon as it came through, we knew that, that's what had been going on. And we actually had guests on board at the time as well. Um, and they were very, I guess, ignorant. We'd kind of, the captain had told them that there'd been a tsunami, and their concerns were, uh, why couldn't they put the jet skis in? It's like, there's kind of bigger things going on here.
Yeah. I guess no one really understood the magnitude of things at that point, apart from just dribbles of information that you're getting. And you're right. I think when people probably think of the word tsunami, they probably think of a tidal wave that's breaking, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's just a significant wall of water
yeah,
more than anything, and let alone out at sea. Like you said, you didn't really get that sense of a wave, right? You just probably drifted over a bit of a swell. What did the next steps look like from there? You clearly, there was clearly, a lot of parts of that area that needed help. What did that initial, I guess, conversation on the boat look like on what to do next?
um, I think one of the main things the captain, or one of the things he did do straight away was organise for the guests to get off. So it was there's two sons of the owner of the boat at the time, and he organised for them to fly back home to where they were from, and then we headed over to. There's obviously a lot of islands in that area, and we headed over to PP Island, and um, there was a group of, I think there was six of us that went ashore, and the captain was a bit reluctant, particularly with the girls, to let us go ashore because obviously there was a lot of rubbish and, stuff in the water. So obviously, we didn't know how bad PP was, but yeah, went ashore and uh, found a lady that spoke English and just said, we're here, we're on that big white boat back there, we've got food, we've got water, is there anything that we can do? And she just said, we need people to help us search or pull bodies out. And we were put in teams of 4 and given like a bed sheet. And yeah, they wanted to kind of pull the bodies to higher ground so that they could be identified for their families. And yeah, that's where it became like super confronting because yeah, everywhere we went, there were just people that were, you know, dead, and we were, you know, putting them on the sheet and taking them up, and then going and getting the next one and taking them up to, I think it was like a basketball court that they had or something like that. So yeah, it was a uh, pretty memorable day, that one.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, and I can imagine that you just focus on the next job at that point. You're not even really thinking about the impact that this is having on you longer term. At this point, it's just what do I need to do? How do I help?
Yeah, that's very true. And I still, and we always talk about, because I think obviously, you know, it was a hot day, and I think it was the 27th that we were there. Just the smell of sewage and the smell of, you know, we called it the smell of death. Like it was awful. And it's a smell that you can kind of still think about and remember, you know?
Mm. How did that impact you? I guess later in your life, like did that trauma show up in different ways throughout your life after that?
Um, I don't I don't think it did. I mean, we were offered counselling at the time, and we did have a bit of time off after the tsunami. Um, yeah, look, I don't think it affected me too much. I guess the only thing that I could say maybe in my current job, but you know, prior to the company that I work with now, um, coming across a person that was, yeah, kind of just hanging on to life. Yeah, I mean, I think in any situation that's going to be confronting, but whether it was more confronting for me because of those memories from the tsunami, I don't know. And it's something that I still, with the demographic that I work with, for my job, it's still something that kind of is on my mind
Mm.
at
D-
times.
Did that experience shift your sense of what really mattered to you at that time?
Yeah, I think so. I think it just kind of, you know, made me feel grateful for everything that I had in my life and everything, just being able to wake up and have another day, is something that all of those people don't have the opportunity to do. So I think just, yeah, n- not that I ever felt like I really took things for granted, but yeah, really making sure that I don't do that.
Yeah, horrific times.
Yeah, it's
I
massive.
just, yeah, I watched a documentary on it not all that long ago on Disney, and just yeah, mind blowing to think something of that scale can happen. And I remember like yeah, like I said, the Christchurch quakes, like just one of the first things you sort of thought of when we had those quakes was like, oh, you're thinking, are we going to have a tsunami? And we were lucky enough we didn't have that. And then 6 months later, we were watching those waves hit Japan in 2011. Again, it just put so much in perspective, of what we'd gone through, but just being so thankful we didn't have to deal with anything like that. But yeah, Mother Nature's so powerful, and it does put a lot into perspective.
Yeah.
Mm. So I want to fast forward a little bit. You've been living with pain most days, but really talk about it. And you mentioned that having spinal surgery was one of the biggest calls that you've ever made. And your husband Adam actually said that this was a moment that really reframed everything for you. Talk us through, I guess, what you've been experiencing with your back, and what led to a decision to get spinal surgery.
Yeah, I guess I had for a couple of years chronic back pain every day. Um, I was still functioning and exercising and I guess trying to find any way that I could, be it, chiropractors, physios, Pilates, injections, initially to try and, yeah, get the pain under control. But yeah, after quite a few years of exploring everything, yeah, it kind of came down to, yeah, two of my discs had completely worn away. And yeah, I think the spinal fusion was really my only real chance to have some improvement, but also a bit of a risk as well.
Wow. Was that just sort of due to all the elite sport and the working on the odds? What had sort of caused that degeneration?
Yeah, I reckon exactly that. Just, volleyball being a sport where you're jumping, so the amount of impact through your spine, you're diving on the floor, repetitively hundreds of times every day, like when I was training, you know, for a lot of years that way. Um, so yeah, I think a combination of, yeah, just aging and volleyball, and yeah, of course, being on the boats and, lifting heavy stuff, all of those things combined.
When Adam says that this is a moment that reframed everything for you, how so?
Um, I guess, yeah, I have to I have to be a lot more careful with uh, lifting. That's probably the biggest one. I used to really enjoy surfing, and that's something that I've kind of retired myself from. Um, yeah, just I know that I don't have the amount of movement that I need to do that. Again, initially it was like, yeah, I was a bit sad about that, but then it's like, I'm lucky to have had the years that I did to do those things, and I think, uh, yeah, just learning to modify and restructure everything that I do so that I can do it comfortably and yeah, not have myself back at the pain levels that I had before I had surgery.
Mm. What's one thing people don't see about living with that kind of challenge?
I think it's just exactly what you said. It's what they don't see, because I think that's probably one of the hardest things with pain. It- you can only describe it, you can't show it. You know, if someone's been stabbed, or if someone's been burnt in a fire, or, it's that visual thing that other people straight away can be like, "Oh, that must be really painful." But I think, when you've got something like back pain, it's hard for people to understand unless they've had chronic back pain themselves. So, yeah, and I don't like to kind of, I don't like to really complain about pain. Um, in my current job, I work with a lot of people that are in pain, and sometimes when I work with clients that have back pain, and the demographic that I work with is probably average age of, I don't know, 85. If they might say to me, "Oh, I have really bad back pain, and you wouldn't understand. That's when I love bringing out. I've got a photo of the. It's like an image of um, the screws and plates that I've got in my spine, and I kind of bring that out and show them and say, actually, I kind of get it. I do understand back pain. So it's kind of a nice way to build rapport with people too.
Yeah. What do you think you don't like talking about those things, or voicing the, I guess, levels of pain that you're in, or what you've been through? Do you think that's come through your experience with elite sport, or like what do you think stilled that? I don't want to say resilience. I don't really know how to frame it. Maybe you can.
I guess I just don't. I don't feel like what I don't feel like my pain should be something that other people have to give me sympathy for, or um, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird one.
So you mentioned resilience for you now is about saying yes to things that scare you. What's a recent yes that's pushed you out of your comfort zone?
Oh, yeah. In May, we went back to PP Island, which we have done for the last couple of years. And I think being someone who's always travelled and, it's never been something that I've been, I guess, um, anxious about or, worried about. And I think, like, yeah, when we travel, or when we travel this year, it's kind of like I start to think a little bit like, what if what if I'm on PP Island and I get sick, or what happens if I do get sick and I've got to go to hospital? Like, how will that pan out on a small island a long way from home? But then it's kind of like, yeah, I think I don't ever want to say no to things, because I think everything that we do in life is a risk, no matter what age we are. We're going to need to take risks to know if we can enjoy and embrace the things that that come to us.
You've always been one from what we've talked about. Like, you've always been one to never shy away from taking a risk. You've done it all through your life and slid you down all these amazing paths. Is there a particular moment that stands out to you that's perhaps a sliding doors moment where perhaps you could have gone another way instead of the direction that you went?
Nothing that's really, yeah, front of mind. That I don't know. I guess I kind of feel like, yeah, my path has been mapped out in a sense, and yeah, whilst I've had to make decisions along the way, I don't feel like there's been too many, yeah, like sliding door.
Mm. No regrets.
I'm sure I've got a few of them, but I don't think I'm willing to share those with you.
Damn it! I was so close.
You
No,
almost
it's
had me.
it's no, it is amazing. Like, just yeah, your mindset around all this stuff. It's yeah, I've certainly taken a lot out of it. It's really cool, and you've clearly got when I spoke to Adam yesterday, like, you've clearly got a husband there that really just clearly thinks the world of you, and I think you really balance each other out really well by the sounds of it. What role has Adam played in your journey over the years, particularly in those areas of resilience and reinvention?
Oh, look, I'm very fortunate that I've got someone that's so supportive. Um, yeah, he's always uh, got my best interest at heart. I think he also, if there's things that I come across that I, might doubt my abilities or my capabilities, he'll be the first one to, you know, believe in me, which will, I guess, help me to believe in myself. Yeah, I'm very lucky that we've had the opportunity to work and travel the world together, and have so many awesome experiences. And I still, every day that I go to work, I still look forward to coming home and seeing him every day.
So beautiful. I love that. That's so cool. If we zoom right out now, last question. I've taken a lot of your time. If we zoom right out now from your volleyball days to the boats, Thailand, to all the amazing adventures that you've had over the years, and the surgeries as well, the good and the bad. What do you most want people to take from your story, or what truth do you want most people to take from the story?
Yeah, don't procrastinate. Uh, if opportunities come your way, yeah, go for it. Just don't doubt yourself. Yeah, that's a tricky question, actually.
I think you hit it well. Do the things that scare you.
Yeah, there you go.
No, I've loved this, Debs. Thank you so much. Amazing journey that you've been on, and again, like I said, I've taken a lot from this, and I'm sure a lot of other people will as well. And I think a lot of people that know you well are probably going to get a few surprises out of this as well. Incredible. Thank you so much again.
Thanks, Jace. Thanks for listening. Thanks for asking questions, and taking the time to want to get to know my story.
Debs Moore on Drop Balls and Big Calls. Thank you so much for listening all the way through this podcast. Again, it means the world to me that you take the time to listen to this podcast when there's so much choice for you out there. I'm really enjoying doing this, and I hope you're getting something out of it too. Remember, you can like, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, or find us on social media. Just look up Big Calls Pod and you'll find us. You can get in touch with us anytime, bigcallspod@gmail.com. If you've got some great feedback for us, constructive criticism or whatever it may be, guest recommendations, we'd love to hear it. Even sponsorship inquiries. We're small, we are growing, but yeah, we'd love to plug some local businesses out there, whether it's on the Mornington Peninsula or somewhere around Melbourne, even with my Kiwi friends over in New Zealand. But again, just appreciate you being here more than anything, and thank you so much for listening.